All right, guys, welcome back to the Strong Life Podcast. Got my buddy Shane Sweatt, and this is a part two follow up of what we did last week. We did that as an Instagram Live, so we're going to crush it again here on Zoom. And Shane, I was thinking like a little segue, talking about some business stuff, talking about the training as we get older. We could expand on that. You and I are creeping up on 50, but I saw going through your Instagram a guy that I think was like 67, maybe 57, but looked ripped. He looked amazing. And then
Yeah.
I want to just talk about the future plans. You and I chatted 7, 8 years ago. 7, 8 years ago, nobody's like, "Hey, what's the next phase?" And I want to talk a little bit about that stuff. So, where would you like to start? I'm going to take some
Uh,
notes also.
I guess we can start about the business. That way, when we get in
Yes.
training, that gets going. So,
The business changed. You created or you added a 24-hour, or I guess like a key club, which I think became, I don't want to say popular, but it definitely has become um, more of this thing happening in gyms. I feel like the past 5 years, maybe from technology, doors, swipe keys, even sport clubs. Shane, my son goes to a baseball club. It's key access at any time to go in and do use all their machines. And it's interesting that people just want this freedom. Like they're not as interested in being coached, maybe, or it's like the step below it.
yeah, a few years ago, I opened up the gym to 24 hours. It was before my gym was personal training and it was power lifters only. So I had powerlifting members. I trained them obviously for meets and competitions and stuff. And then, a little after Louie passed away, um, I was looking at some things and I needed to make some changes in the gym financially to make it successful. And I thought one of the better things I could do to honor his memory and honor him is get this training to the masses, right? We know it works for athletes, proven it time and time again. So, there's no more proof needed at this point with that. So I wanted to bring it to the masses. Now, that brought the gym more money in a sense for a little while. Um, and as far as it goes, I'm still kind of out on whether um, I like it or I'm going to keep it this way. Part of me does not like it, to tell you the truth. I wanted an easy barrier to entry. I felt like people would come in and they would, and what I did is 24-hour access. People pay the fee, and then they also get programmings included. Okay. Now, here's the funny thing that you're gonna find interesting. Um, Majority of people do not follow programming.
What is
And
it?
it's free.
Train heroic up on a TV monitor each time, or
It gets emailed to them each week. It
are
gets
you
redone on Sunday night.
are you on Wi-Fi, I think?
Wi-Fi, yeah.
Yeah. They
Yep.
sell
And
like you sell the team programming.
so I sell programming for powerlifting, raw and equipped. I sell programming for bodybuilding and then for CrossFit competitors at all different levels, and then for CrossFit gyms where they can pay
Yes.
for the gym to be programmed for the month. Now, in my gym, I program for that and other things as well. And the interesting thing is, I just figured people have never had access to a gym like this. My gym was a private gym for the majority of the time I've had it. And, so then you open the doors and people come in and, what you have is a lot of kids who want to do their own programming, or it's funny, they
Yes.
find like a 21 or 22-year-old, they're like, that's famous on like the internet and they want to do their programming and they'll pay extra money for the programming. And I watch the things they're doing. I literally have a kid in there the other day who's trying to power lift. I don't know how he's going to make it. Really, I just watching his programming. I really don't. I don't see anything that's going to get him prepped and ready for it. And don't really see his numbers going anywhere, but I see he has good potential. So I walked up, said something, hey, the programming's for free. If you follow the programming, I'll help you anytime I can. Like, I'll hand off to you and I'll help you. If you ask advice, I'll give it. But the problem is, if you're following someone else's programming, I don't know where it makes it harder for me to find a problem for you if you have any kind of problems or, we need a sticking point or whatever, mobility issue, anything like that. If I'm doing the programming, I know what's been programmed. If I know what you're doing and you followed all of it, if you have a special issue, it'll be easy for me to fix. They just want to follow who's popular. And I hate to tell them, but a 21, 22-year-old coach might be a very intelligent coach for their age, but they're not in the game yet, not that age,
I
So,
the way I say that, Shane, is like not that doing something longer makes us smarter, but
mhm,
we've been coaching longer than their
mhm,
coach has actually been on earth.
correct. Yep.
But yeah, the young mind is interesting. I do, I
Mhm,
work in a high school, so they're very influenced, of course, by Sam Sulek
mhm,
or you name another
yeah,
bodybuilder. And so it's very interesting. So you have this 24-hour gym, and right now it sounds like it's
yeah.
like a little heartbreaking.
There's I have the kind of nice thing is before I had, if they weren't a personal training client, they were an elite athlete. There was no kind of in between. And now I have people, regular members who are training for themselves to be healthy or maybe to compete or maybe they're weekend warriors. And there's quite a few people I've met that are awesome. So like that, I wouldn't want to get rid of because I've met quite a few people that I never would have met that are wonderful people. And I've got to help some people like that just to overall be healthy and have a better quality of life. Nothing necessarily performance wise, and that's enjoyable as well. But to me, also, there's a point where I like. To me, it's all about the last 1%. You know, it's like I remember this guy one time said, at a meet, he's like, well, West Side, they get all the strong guys, so Lou has to give them the last 1% because they were already good. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you don't think the last 1% is that important or that big of a deal, I said, let's drive out in a boat about 5 miles offshore and swim 99% of the way. And I said, tell me how important that last 1% is.
It's interesting
You
how
know?
people think like that just things are so easy. The
Yeah.
like the clouded judgment on
Mhm.
things. I've
Yeah.
I almost wonder like I've thought about this. I don't have the setup for a 24-hour gym, but I almost wonder, I don't know if it would help or hurt financially, but it would certainly help the quality of people. Like if you want to do this 24-hour gym, you've got to be either in our group for 3 months or you have to do 10 PT packages in a month,
Hmm.
or in five
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about some stuff like that, and I think that's great. I need to do something like that because one of the things too about the gym is that I have a lot of high-end bars and equipment. It's a powerlifting gym. I have competition bars. My bars are getting bent all the time. I color coded every bar, put key codes on every wall to what the bars are designed for, used for. I have bars for pin pressing, bars for rack pulls. They like to use my competition bars for rack pulls. I have a Lico professional series Olympic lifting bar. Like it's just one of those things that the knowledge is so low, um, that it makes it kind of hard to talk to people sometimes because what you're trying to say to them, they're not going to sometimes not comprehend, or maybe they think their idea is better, but they don't have a basis behind it. So it's one of those things where originally I was assuming I was going to get this up and get a good amount of people in, and then I was going to move buildings to a bigger facility. And then what I want to do is cage off an area that was for my power lifters only, and it was
Hmm.
invite only. Because the goal was not to create separation, but the goal was you get a 16, 17-year-old kid come in and go, how do I get in there? Like,
You
well,
earn your
in
way.
there, you earn your way. And what I would tell them is for the next year, if you don't miss a day training, you don't, you always put your weights away. You show that you're a good member. If someone needs help spotting or handing off, you do it. Throughout this time period, if you're doing those things, I'll give you books to read. If you read those books, I'll ask you questions. You get those questions right, you understand them. We can have conversation. You want to ask questions, ask me questions anytime. Um, and after that year, if you do all those things, you read the books I tell you to read, you don't miss a workout, you put your stuff away, you hand off to people, you're a good member, then you'll get invited in. At that point, you'll be with a group. Now, with that group, we're going to have you train for a little while. As long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, we will pick out a meet for you. When you get ready to go for that meet, we'll pick out numbers for you. If you hit those numbers or higher, you get to stay in there. If not, outside of the room, and we need to and if they were, it's probably going to be a one and done type thing, but if they want to try get back in, I can give them ways to do that. The numbers aren't like, hey, I want you to be a pro power lifter and I want you to be my next world record holder and knock it out of the park. And if you can't do that, I don't need you. That's not it. It's numbers they can hit easily, as long as they train with intensity they're supposed to during the time and listen to what they're supposed to do. Then I figured with that now they get in a group. Now the group, how I would explain it to the group is you cannot complain about your training partner because it's your job to train them. If you don't like the way they hand off, you're the trainer. Talk to yourself about it. If you don't like the way they spot, you're the person getting them ready to spot the way you want to be spotted. You know, um, the atmosphere, the attitude. This person's in your group. You guys show by example. So for me, that was a way to clean up, elite powerlifters and make them keep them on their toes. So the only problem with that is I don't have enough space to do both, right? And so the gym hasn't gotten to the point yet where I can get a different facility. Ever since COVID, my area, the rent keeps going through the roof and it just has been climbing pretty hard. So it's kind of changed the landscape in my area a little bit. But that was kind of my thought process, going into it. I think you're right, though. I do need to do something as raise the barrier of entry just a little bit more to bring the quality where I want it.
Yeah, so I was thinking of two things. So I had picked up I think it's a older or an original Texas squat bar, like it's
Mhm.
longer. Is
Yep.
that? I showed it
Correct.
to Donnie Thompson, and I got it, and it's bent. And I was like, how the fuck does somebody bend this bar? It's like a mega
Yeah.
barbell. It's longer. So is that a squat
Yeah.
bar? Is that
So
what
it's a
that is?
squat bar. The old ones were 55 pounds.
Yes. And the
Um,
thicker
the,
slightly thicker diameter.
yep. Then Elite FTS came out with a Mastodon, which was 60, and then after
Hmm.
that, Louie had York had Texas Power Bar make a 65-pound bar, and that was what the West Side one used. How that was probably bent, in all honesty, is someone probably box squatting and came off their back. I
And
mean,
they dropped it.
I've at West Side I saw a bar get bent, a lot massive amount of band tension, a lot of weight, and it came off the back and hit the box, and it's the only one of those bars I've ever seen bent.
I
So
couldn't believe
yeah,
it was bent. I was actually shocked that it could
yeah.
be bent. And so yeah, I was wondering, so how are people bending bars? Dropping it while doing like rack pulls
Rack
or
pulls, yeah, rack pulls with band
dumping
tension. You
and
know,
dumping? What about dumping a bar with a back squat?
yeah, but here's the thing. That's the thing that's about my gym, right? Is I have four monoliths in there, and I have four power racks. And everybody goes to the power rack. So the monoliths have spud straps, so they're nylon,
Yep.
so the bars don't get beat up as bad if you're to miss a lift, right? So you have people squatting and they get in a position and they dump it because they're not getting people to spot them. A lot of younger people don't want to ask anybody to spot and help. I'd
Yes.
be more embarrassed about dumping a bar off my back and ruining an expensive bar than I would about asking for a spot. We try to cultivate a really good atmosphere to get people to, hey, people are willing to spot you. Everybody's always been friendly in the gym. I don't leave another option. If someone asked us if someone else could spot them and the person said no, they wouldn't be in my gym anymore. I don't allow an atmosphere like that. So yeah, so we're gonna create something different to get people their knowledge base up a little bit,
Yep.
uh, and that's gonna be the next focus. Try to build the gym numbers up, and then I want to get a different building to where I can have the space and I can have a separate area. And that separate area, like I said, is just I want to get kids interested. I want to pique their interest. And the thing that for me is the things that were interested to me is when they were hard to get into, right? It wasn't the easy stuff that everybody could join. It was the stuff that no one wanted to because you had to work so hard or you had to put so much effort into it. That's the things that excited me and got me excited. And that's who I want, right?
I'm not sure
For,
if that's
for
a
powerlifting.
norm today.
Yeah, well, hey, you know what? Here's the thing. I agree. It's not the norm. But then I also feel like if people don't, if they stop trying, don't keep trying it, it's going to stay the norm. It doesn't have to stay the norm. The way I look at it is eventually there's pushback. I don't like, uh, technically, I don't like how weak society is right now.
Hmm.
And it bothers me. It just bothers me. I think people should work on their capacity. I mean, you're given this amazing life on earth, right? We have all these opportunities in the world, and I've been very fortunate as a strength coach. Um, I've always said fortunate, but I also want to say I've also earned my way in a lot of things too. I've studied, I've put myself around the best people, I listened to them. I worked really hard to be able to reduplicate when I found people doing things better than I could. And that has allowed me the opportunity to be around some absolutely amazing individuals. And so, those individuals all have one thing in common. They're very highly capable psychologically and physically. And because of that, those are my favorite people to be around. And I want to provide the opportunity for other people to be highly capable mentally and physically. And that will allow them to have the potential to have an amazing life. Um, and weakness is not what gets you there, right? Mental weakness, physical weakness, neither one of those things help provide the opportunity to get where people would really truly have an amazing life.
I think of, you know, I didn't realize how much of a bubble I was in until I started coaching at my high school. I was always in the private sector. During that time, Rutgers, for 1 year traveled to my gym. Then I was at Lehigh, and then I was at Rutgers. And I remember Ron McKeefery telling me, after I had left Rutgers, he said, the hardest thing for you, Zach, is working for somebody else, people telling you what to do, how to do it. I didn't quite actually grasp that until I got to the high school where I've argued. I tell this openly to the coaches. I go, I've argued with every single coach here, not because I'm trying to argue with you, but because I'm battling for the betterment of the kids and everybody's making it harder. And so when you said, I'm going to give this kid an opportunity to train, but you got to follow this program for a year, you will never miss a workout. There's all these books you're going to read. The kids working in a quote unquote like normal school, what it's taught me is that they're ready and will, they quit very easily. There's also no embarrassment. So Shane, if you were my buddy and we were on the football team together and I'm going through practice and I'm just fucking getting killed and then I quit. Well, now I gotta face you every day in the hallway and it's an embarrassment. I'm embarrassed by it. Then the other kids ask me how football is and I have to say I quit. It's embarrassment. Today kids are not embarrassed to quit. In fact, I've often seen siblings quit. Like it's completely okay in that under that roof. Hey, you don't like it? Don't do it. My wife was telling me today, he's like, a lot of parenting is actually you got to harp on your kid to get things done. She's like, if they give you pushback and you don't say, no, this is what it takes, it's not happening. That's why I told my son, hey, it's in season. We have to lift tonight. We got to do some strength and power stuff. And part of me before I had that conversation with my wife was like, man, he's probably tired. He's practicing. Sunday he did yard work. I don't know for how many hours, like, moving all this mulch. So I was fabricating excuses like a quote unquote normal person. You and I grew up in different places. My bodybuilding gym I grew up in, I always say it was the west side of bodybuilding, Diamond Gym. And so when I left that gym, I thought this is how gyms are. This is normal activity, loud music, intensity all the time. And so listening to you say I'm disappointed in society, I feel the same. And so it's actually a very big struggle with things like I live in a very little town, Shane. Like if you live in town, you could ride your bike everywhere, 2 square miles. So if you're a
Nice.
kid training with me, you could ride your bike to my gym. So do you know what my mindset is when a parent says my son has no time to train? Like, what do you mean? You live 2 minutes away by bike and you probably spend 8 hours a day on your phone. You can't get here 30 minutes. And my buddy said to me, he goes, Zach, there's one gold medal. We don't get to share it. Not everybody's a winner, and not everybody could be at the top. And see, he said, so you actually need the people who don't care. You need the people who almost want to be great, but they're happy with good enough, third, second. And then there's like one killer. And I said, I hate that. I hate that reality because I'm trying to build everybody into a winner. And so I've listened to some very unique coaches. One guy I think you'd love chatting with, Andy Rovat. He wrestled at Michigan and he was an Olympian, and now he's in Texas. But he also spent time living in Russia to learn their Russian wrestling training system. And so I was with him this summer in Vermont. We run a wrestling intensive camp, and he models it after the Russians, like intensity for 2 days, one day Still train. Third day is training, but not crazy intense. But long story short, he said, I'm not going to push a kid to work harder or to win. He's like, when they want to win, they'll do it. I'm going to just let it happen. I need to have a conversation with him. It would probably be good for us to do a Zoom call conference
Mhm.
to discuss that. But
Yeah.
I'm always interested to hear how a coach could just be, hey, when they're ready. It reminded me because last conversation we had, you said athletes need to learn how to win through their own unique manner. And
Mhm.
so I think you guys would have a 12-hour conversation and not even be 1%
Yeah.
deep into your conversation. It would be very deep. So the tough thing with business is the rule number one of a business is make money. That's really if I make more money, I could do more things. I could get more
Mhm.
space, more equipment. But guys like you and I are ready to lose money to
Yeah.
build winners first. And I'm looking at athletics now, Shane, like the top just keep getting better. Like they're really separating themselves. There's really nothing in the middle. And
Yeah.
then the bottom just keeps getting worse. Like kind of what I'm seeing is like you're a fucking killer or you're the
Mhm.
prey. And I'm feel
Yeah.
like I used to say it was 10%, 5%. Now I'm looking at like 2%, 1%, but that 2 or 1% is so high level. Like a high
Yeah.
school kid is competing in Olympic trials now,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
everybody else is just getting fucking killed.
you're having some, I mean, numbers are still getting better, right? So the top athletes are still improving. The numbers are improving worldwide. You're seeing some young kids do some amazing things, but you're right. There's just less of them. And that was the thing, like I agree with the wrestling coach. You can't make anything happen, right? Like, if that was the case, that'd be easy. I would storm into the high school and hold every kid and shake them silly until they listened to what I had to say.
That's
And by
right.
the end of the day, the whole school would be game on. I have a bunch of school of killers, right? I can put that effort in. That's not a problem. But the thing really, what it comes down to, and that's why I wanted that caged area, because when there's that separation, that caged area, and I even like had laid stuff out. So I found stereo systems like to project, and I have their own music, have it walled off, but you like plexiglass, you can see in it, caged area where you enter in, and have the speakers facing away so they can have their own stuff separate from the gym. But really, the part of that was for them to make a choice, right? I want them to look. I don't care if it takes a year or two, 3 years of looking at that before they get enough guts up. But I figured if someone asks me, I can tell them what it takes to get in. And there's going to be one or two people. One person who goes, "Ooh, that sounds like a lot." Another person who gets excited about that. And it was really to find those people and to give them something to look at. When you're a kid, we look at certain things and it's like, God, man, if I could train there, if I could go do this, or man, I'd love to learn from this athlete, or you watch the Olympics and you are impressed by the amount of training they put in and the outcome in the sport. And it's like a drug, it's addicting. You want to be around people like that, right? Like I want to build people like that. I want to be around people like that. And so I just wanted to give people when they came in, I wanted them to give them something to look at, aspire to, like, and even if they don't want to join the powerlifting, but maybe like they see people train real hard and go, man, I need to kick up my intensity, or they're always here. I can't miss a day, like I see the people who are getting great results, they don't miss. Um, you know, for years, I watched my personal training clients get extremely inspired by my powerlifters, right? And they didn't make any excuses for themselves. They're just like, man, they never miss any days, and man, they train so hard. And it was one of those things that I didn't have to say anything, but my personal training clients, day one, all my powerlifters are in the gym. You see how they train, you see the intensity. So there's no fallacy on what's expected. Like there's no like, I think I'm training hard enough. You think? Well, if you think, you're not giving your all. If you're giving your all, it doesn't matter. You can say, well, I don't know if I'm training as hard as they want me to or not, but this is everything I have, right? That's all you can do. At the end of the day, that's what I want to see. Everything you have. That's it. It's pretty simple. But I just wanted something to inspire and to, kind of have that mystique, something you want to earn your way into, you
Yeah,
know?
Mystique. My buddy Jim Steele told me this. Jim Steele used to power lift, And he said the mystique, he's older than us. Jim might be like 55, something like that. But he said when he was younger, you'd have to wait a month to read this magazine about how his favorite football player trained chest or ate breakfast. He's like, now, you just look on Instagram. He's like, that ease of everything takes away the mystique. And so
Yeah.
it makes me feel like I sound like this old guy, bad guy. I talk this generation is very weak. It's really the truth.
Mhm.
What is the average age of people entering your 24-hour gym? Do you know roundabout?
Oh man, that'd be really hard to tell. I have a very wide age range. I mean, I have anywhere from currently like 13-year-olds coming in to people in their 70s. I would say there's a good group of people probably 18 to 24, and then there's a good group of people probably 40 to like 55. That's
Yeah.
probably like the two biggest groups currently going on in the gym. Yeah.
I find that like 18 to 20 something year old age is very much the age and mindset of, I would say, quote unquote, I'm on my own program. I don't know what that stage is of mindset and psychological development, but they're like finding themselves and testing things and want to figure things out on their own. And then that age 40 is like, hey, I'm actually ready to be coached and I want to be better. And then that 25 to age 40 range is I'm fucking busy. I'm working a lot, or we just got married. We're starting to have kids, da da da.
Yeah.
And so I've been, our kind of target audience, we started training adults, has been men and women over 40, people who are
Mhm.
very busy, have kids, and especially men, they feel bad taking care of themselves because what does I say this as a dad myself? I'm taking my money and investing it in all my kids,
Mhm.
baseball and tennis and whatever for the family. And if I'm going to do something for myself, it's like you feel bad. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to flip that script where men should be taking care of themselves to the maximum because now you're a better dad, you're a better husband, you're more energetic, you're a better partner. You've done something good for yourself. Now you're ready to be a better like teammate, throughout your day.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, and you're physically more capable. You are less likely to become a burden on your family.
Yep.
It's work. Your family, right? So if you developed a disease you couldn't help, I mean, family takes care of family, and nobody has a problem with that. But as a dad, I'm sure you don't want to be a burden for years on your kids and wife because you didn't take care of yourself. And
Exactly.
the biggest thing that I'm telling you, like the biggest thing that I see, and I'm sure you see this too, is lead by example, right?
Yes.
Like I always try to tell people, my household, my parents were the ones who got me into fitness, right? And my parents never had pop in the house, so I always tell people, I'm like, I tell someone who I see their nutrition plan and they drink pop, I'm like, low hanging fruit, get rid of the pop first. Low hanging fruit, and they're like, man, it's so difficult. You don't drink pop? No. But I tell them like it was easy for me. First time I had a pop, I mean, it just sounds funny, but my friend, his sister had at 18, she had her high school graduation party, and I go over there, and parents are like, "Hey, you can have some beer, just be cool." I'm like, "That's cool. Can I have that Pepsi?" And they're like, "Sure." So I had a sugar buzz by the night, felt horrible the next morning. I had drank a lot of pop. I didn't get drunk. I wasn't
Get,
drinking alcohol, drinking pop. But
that
the
gives
thing
you a
is, like,
hangover.
I was like, I don't ever want that stuff again. I just never had it, so I never developed a taste. So it made it easy, right? My parents worked out all the time. I didn't know anything different. That was completely normal to me. And then when I realized that wasn't normal is when I started seeing other people's parents and the type of shape they were in, and the difference between their energy levels, their output, what they could do. Um, you know, uh, my father passed away about a month ago. And what I could tell you is like he had ALS for the last 5 years, which is not common in your 80s. Um, but a year before he passed away, we went out to Glacier National Park. And we go out there, And the first, we get out there and it's just a torrential downpour. Like hardly anybody's in the park. There is standing water, like when you're driving, like just standing water everywhere. And we get out to a hike that is like a 10-mile hike. And you couldn't see in front of you because it's raining so hard, you had to look down. So my mom, who's in her 70s, my dad's in his 80s, we get out, and my wife, we get out, we go for a 10-mile hike, elevation, up and down, up and down. This guy has had ALS for, 3.5, 4 years at this point. He's in his 80s, didn't complain once, didn't have to slow up for him, you know? I mean, even when he was in bad shape for himself, he was so far ahead of the game for years and years of training and pushing, and his mental state has always been phenomenal. So it's just one of those things where you see that and go, okay, now what would have happened if he didn't work out?
Mm.
He, probably the last 4 years of his life or so, probably would have been in a wheelchair, and like, which would be very difficult. I live in Cincinnati. My mom still lives in Michigan. But it would have been difficult for her to get him around. She's 5 foot tall. My dad is 6'2". Like she's not going to be able to get him in and out of car and things like that. And, it's not a problem if it's something like, someone gets cancer and they get real sickly and they aren't physically strong enough. No one can help that. But if people are weak because they didn't work, train hard, or they didn't work out, they didn't eat good, that's a burden that could have been avoided, you know? And I would never want to be a burden on someone I can avoid. But the biggest thing for me is just set the example, make it normal for kids.
Man,
The only kids I
said
see
that a
coming
lot.
in, yeah, the only kids I see coming in and training hard nowadays are the ones I also see the parents coming in training hard.
Interest into the 24-hour gym, or the parents are part of the group and then
In,
the kid
into
does.
into the 24-hour gym.
That's
Even the
great.
24-hour gym. Not even like I have some power lifters who have their kids wrestle and stuff, and their kids come in and they train, and their parents train. But even just the ones that are just normal members of 24-hour gym, their kids seem to take it a lot more serious and train a lot harder.
Yes, they view
So
it as normal activity, as you
yeah.
said. I say this a lot. I don't know why it's not like common knowledge, especially sport dads. Hey, I want to get my kid working out. Da, da, da. He's 7. He's this. Listen, I'm not training a kid who's 7. I'm waiting until middle school. But until then, what do they see you doing? And I remember I'm in my basement. I remember once, like my kids must have been like 7 and 5. My daughter had like a poster paper and they thought it was fun. She put a workout together and it was like crazy. It was like 50 couch jumps, 50 push-ups, 50 kettlebell deadlift. And it was like this, like, little handwriting. And they didn't realize like this is training. They were just looking at exercise as fun because they saw me doing it. They saw me loving it. They also grew up in my gym. I opened the gym 12 years ago. So my son was 4 and my daughter was 6. My wife had a little office. She set up like bean bags, a little TV for them, all kinds of puzzles, coloring books, but they never stayed in the office. They always came out and did stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, thank God that it was just no, normal activity. Also,
Yeah.
I know you work with a lot of military. Shane, I'm really shocked with, yeah, it doesn't make the money, but the big push about mental health from the schools to, the Veterans Association, how I said this to Dave Tate on Table Talk during the Arnold weekend. I said, how is there not like a weight room and fitness center in every single school and VA where they're really taught how to do this? And then I just had to think to myself, looking at like the way the government used money. You see
Mhm.
it like posted all over X. Like we send money, like for example, we send money every week to like the Taliban, like funding
Yeah.
terrorism. I'm like, well, why would we build all these gyms when America consumes the majority of pharmaceutical drugs for depression and disease and all this stuff? My mom said to me long ago, she's like, back in the day, old people just passed away in their bed or on their couch at home. They didn't transition to some place where they got really sick. So that hit me. My mom came home Saturday from that rehab care facility, and people were in there. That's it. They weren't
Yeah.
leaving. And I was like, fuck, man, I got to get my mom out of here to get her. Um, you and I would understand this. I hope the people listening, our normal environment. So you're training at West Side, you're training at Sweatshop. our normal environment is hard work, intensity, being strong. But if you're not in that environment and you're around, I don't know what like the big chain gym is by you, but by us, it's like Retro Fitness, Planet Fitness. If
Mhm.
you ever walk into that place, everybody's on their phone or they're sitting on a machine, laying on a machine, and on their phone. So there's
Mhm.
zero effort. So if you're texting during your set, nobody thinks you're a weirdo. But if you and
Yeah,
I
right.
were like going through a gym and somebody's on their phone, you're like, what the F? It has no place.
Yeah.
So to environment shapes everything, even to the
Mhm.
point where like if we're talking about training, I've seen some very average training programs achieve more because the environment was so great. The people,
100%.
people
100%.
you're around.
You're right. Environment is huge, huge about that. And when I first opened my gym, everything was wrapped around atmosphere. It's no different if you look at like special operations, right?
Yes.
If you look at like the way Delta was formed, like in Vietnam, we talk about the guy who started Delta, like going to get some prisoners of war out, and some of the guys got taken, and he's like, rather go up river with five killers than a couple hundred scrubs, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not knocking the people. This is a comment from him, not knocking the people, our other military members, right? But not everybody's meant for the same things. We're all different roles, and they're all important roles. But at the end of the day, I've always been underneath you can have excuses or you can have results. You can't have both. And so ultimately, if you're not getting the results you want, don't give me an excuse. Give me the answer without an excuse.
Takes
Right.
a takes a very
And
unique mindset.
yeah. And so the thing is, you look at those guys in special operations, and here's how I would put it. People nowadays say, well, man, they have the best equipment. Like, I don't care. Give them the worst equipment.
That's right.
They have the best minds. It doesn't really matter. You're going to show me that they should be the ones who are the physically the best shape when you talk about different military units or so. They have the highest level of knowledge, and they have the hardest barrier of entry. And so the thing is, they're just in the situations more frequently, right? So they get to, steel sharpen steel, right? They're in these harder situations more frequently than everybody else. And I guess what I'm getting at is I always tell people a gym, number one is knowledge, number two is atmosphere, number three is equipment. If you have
Mm.
knowledge and atmosphere, you'll figure it out. You'll figure out a way to win, a way to get better. The equipment will come. If you have the knowledge and atmosphere, the equipment will come. Because if you have knowledge and atmosphere, you have the right people. And if you have the right people, it will get infectious. People will show up and they will push. So that is where I have to figure out how to get this generation to where I can produce killers, and then it'll get infectious. Even people who aren't born that way, you can't help it if you're around it. I mean, now there's people who are surely gonna would step in a room and turn around and leave really quick. But there are people who would come in and like, wow, like I'm just here to get a work on it, but man, you guys are amazing, and I'm really impressed with you. Like the people who start off like that, a lot of times we can get them. We can get them to convert and really train hard and really, do something with themselves.
Somebody said, man, I wish I could remember. They were telling a story about Louie. Louie was in the original West Side, and like a drunk lady like stumbled into the gym and he put a weight vest on her and she was trying to like talk but couldn't. He just put a weight vest on her, put the belt around her, made her like drag the sled,
Yeah.
and they said she was like drunk or on drugs. Then she came in. He taught her how to box squat, and somebody was like, "Lou, like, fuck you doing?" Like that lady was like high on drugs, and she's never gonna come back here. He's like, "That's how every champion started. They came in here not knowing what it even was. They may have been." On drugs or in trouble with the law, but they showed up. They showed up, and I taught them. And he's like, that one time becomes something else. Such a unique mindset to give somebody a chance who's like so far out. That shows an extreme ability to change. And sometimes I've said this on the maybe the not so bright side. I've said it to kids at my school and at the underground. Hey man, like you're a killer this year, but I've unfortunately seen you guys like fizzle out sometimes. So I don't put a guarantee in my head that you're going to be 4 years from now like 100 times better. You might completely blow it next year and then quit 2 years later. And so I hate to say it, but I've learned to just take it almost like day by day. You never know. Like I've been with some like amazing kids, and then they just disappear on you, and you can't coach them, and they don't want to listen, and you don't know what happened. And it's the human, very hard to, humans and technology are like the two most erratic, unpredictable things.
Yeah, right. It's the story about Louie doesn't surprise me. I saw tons of stuff out of Lou from that. Um, I will do the same thing, just because that was always like a thought process of mine is to give people a chance, but Louis really honed that in and really I felt like that, but he led by example, and I got to see the outcome of the things that he did, and then that just hardened and solidified it for me. Um, and it's he had this saying. He's like the brightest stars burn out the fastest, and I
Mm,
1000% believe in that. And when I first opened my gym, I get really excited when I'd see someone come in and I'd put them through a session. I'm like, oh my God, for the type of training, their knowledge base, like this person, I could make them a world record holder, like guaranteed, if they can stay in it long enough, world record holder. And it was never the most gifted that ever did anything that impressed me.
hmm
It was the step down, the person who had a really good head on the shoulders, like enough genetics, but they weren't that ultra special physically, right? I never had a genetic gift pan out for me. Um, I always had that step down. And then it got to the point where I'd have genetically gifted people come in, and when I noticed they had it and physically, and I didn't know mentally or not, because a lot of times, sometimes when people want to show you what they think you want to see, I would sit them down and I'd say, "Hey, look here," and I did this to an individual. I said, "Look, see, I told the guy like, here, X period of time, I can make you the strongest man in the world in your weight class. I can make you a world record holder." I was like, "But 99% chance that's not going to happen." And I said, "Here's why." I said, "You're gifted." And I said, "People who are gifted, it comes easy. And when it comes easy, it doesn't mean as much to them." And I said, then they get to the point where they win so easily and by so much that they start not dotting their I's and crossing their T's. And they
hmm
still win for a while. And then they stop listening and then they want to do their own thing for no reason, just an ego. They want to say
hmm
they're the ones who are doing their own training. And so then they start to do that. And then I said, after a while, after a couple of years, they get beat. I was like, now the person who beat them had to be a killer. So they probably had their eye on them for years. Once they beat them, I know how I am. I'll never think about you or worry about you again. I look at the next person. If there's no other person in front and I'm in the lead, then I'm going to look at what's the next barrier that needs to get broke, right? I don't look behind now and say, okay, what do I need to just stay behind this person? Not worried about them. They're done. They're finished. Someone who's genetically gifted like that, they get beat. They don't like getting beat. They're used to getting praise all the time because everything they do is gold, right?
Yes.
So they usually fade away. But if they don't, it's okay. One or two meets later, they will because they stopped listening to their coach. They stopped learning. So how are they going to figure out how to beat the person who just beat them? The person who did spend the last few years watching them and learning how to beat that person. Because that's essentially what they did. They saw someone in front of them and they kept trying new things and trying whatever, and they kept working and until they figured out the formula for them to win. Well, that person has their formula figured out. The genetically gifted person doesn't. How long is it going to take them to figure it out? It's easier for them to quit the sport and to go on something new because you know what's going to
Yes.
happen? The first time they do it, they're going to have someone walk up to them and go, "Someone said this is your first time doing this." "Yeah, it is." "Oh my God, you're amazing. You could be one of the best in the world." And they'll be happy and smile and ride that high until they get to the same point in that sport. Then they'll quit and they'll rinse and repeat until they're too old to do it.
That's
That is the
truth.
majority.
If you've been around athletes a lot, you've seen this. Kind of what I was saying earlier is like you see kids, they achieve success quite easily, and then they have to go and do other things and special different things. And then if they don't succeed in that, they have excuses to like validate that. And it's very hard to communicate this to the athletes today who are just jumping
Yeah.
from place to place, gym to gym. I mean, we look at the college, the NIL, one program to the next. There's really no development. And I know it's like people view it as a bad thing, but I think loyalty is a good thing. Like, okay,
Yeah.
it didn't work out this year. That doesn't mean the coach sucks. Like, there's some
Yeah.
responsibility on your part to do other things and to perform. One thing that was said about Louis, and I can't remember who I heard it from, maybe through podcast, but they said like he kind of like was starting to like not he enjoyed working more with the fighters
Hmm.
than the power lifters. I can't remember what were some of the reasons behind that, but are you working with fighters and combat athletes more?
Um, currently right now, not really. It goes through waves. I've done quite a bit of that, and I do like that. I kickboxed for a long time. I love fight combat sports. I really like working with fighters. I love working with military. I love working with fighters. I love working with powerlifters too. Here's what it came down to. After a while, like near the end, the new guys coming in weren't gangster anymore.
Yes,
They weren't killers anymore, and that's why Louis didn't. Louis, trust me, Louis's favorite sport is powerlifting. Man, you ever talk to the guy? Like listen to everything that guy's ever said about powerlifting. Like he lived it. Like if anybody's ever lived powerlifting, that's that man. That guy sacrificed more, gave more to powerlifting than anybody I ever met in my life. So people want to make excuses, and with Lou, and at the end, like, oh, he didn't care. He cared more about the fighters. He cared more about who trained the hardest.
yes,
And if you stayed off your phone, you saw the I'm sure West Side versus the World, right?
of
At the
course.
end, he's talking about kids are on the phone. He's like, I can't get it. He's like, I don't understand it. Um, and I think that's what it was. I think that if you had people walking through the door that was like the next, like if there was a new age Chuck Vogel walking through the door, I think you wouldn't have heard that comment about him doing more with fighters. Not because he doesn't like fighters. He loved training fighters, but
Hmm.
when it came to fighters and powerlifters, whoever was going to throw down the hardest is who he was going to put the most effort behind.
I say the same
So,
to kids. I go, I love everybody, but if you work hard, I love you
yeah,
more. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly.
I don't like being around lazy people at all.
No, I
I,
don't
I
either.
don't I don't like it within myself when
Mhm.
laziness or excuses creep in. And
Yeah,
I believe everybody needs some inner samurai, some inner
yeah,
gladiator. But comfort is the enemy. And I think the phone is I tell kids, if
yeah,
you can't stop touching your phone, that phone is your boss. That phone owns you. You're the bitch.
yeah,
That you're the
yeah,
you're that phone is making you the bitch. Like you can't stop
100%.
touching it. It's 45 minutes or an hour. And I even think like in coaching, Shane, at least not so much in the private sector, but in college, it has become so much technology driven that the athletes trust the computer or the velocity reading more. And
Yeah,
I've even brought in VBT into my school because kids will say, I was moving it fast. Well, I have the coach's eye, but they don't trust my word. So
yeah,
now I'm showing you on a machine, this
yeah,
fucking machine that you trust more than a human, what
right.
it is. But you know what I think people won't get? We said about like coaches, we've been coaching longer than some have been alive. When you're so busy looking at, the velocity and the speed of stuff, your eye is on the machine. You've taken your
Yeah,
eyes oftentimes off the athlete or the lifter. And so today, like a kid was squatting and his velocity was a certain amount. And I said, you're also squatting halfway. So everything is a zero rep to me. He's like, what? I felt like I was going all the way down. I said, okay, this guy stay here, read his velocity on every rep of squats. I'm going to record you while you squat. And he did a double and it's halfway down. I said, you need to feel your hamstrings and calves pretty much, touching. I said, you don't feel that? He's like, I thought. And all that stuff comes to mind. And I say, see, that's where an inexperienced coach would let that slide. But that is,
mhm,
like you said, that's not dotting the I or crossing the T. You're always doing half reps. It's the good enough is the death of greatness. I think guys like you are going to have a tough time in this world with the way of the world. So that being said, let's segue into this kind of last question, and we could probably make this a whole podcast. Like, we're almost 50. Are you going to coach forever? What is the future of the gym? Where does Shane Sweatt go in 5 or 10 years from now? I personally don't think it's good for us to always be coaching, always be in the gym? Like, what is another chapter in your book of life?
Well, as far as how long I stay at the gym, that's going to be dependent on people. I get some killers. I can stay in there till the day I die. I don't.
Killers who? Powerlifting killers, athlete, what
Anybody,
killers?
any kind of
Anybody.
athlete, you
Yep.
know. You know, I do really like working with the military. I like working with fighters. I like working with any sport really. But um, if not, then I can't sacrifice myself anymore if people aren't willing to put the effort in. And so then what that would look like is I'm going to move on to trying to become way more capable myself. I'll do a lot more physical training myself. I want to push. I'd want to probably push nutrition as hard as I can, like meaning growing all my own food. If I can raise animals, like that route. Not fully homestead. I would like, hopefully I can, have some money saved up and do some stuff with that. But basically, live the lifestyle as if I was doing that. And then, I would like to, I want to find, I want every year to have a challenge for myself, right? And push myself. And I always think like that at least once a year, you should, scare the hell out of yourself with something. If you're someone who afraid of heights, put yourself on a ledge 10,000 feet up. I don't know, do something, right? If you're scared of water, put yourself in a situation where, hey, okay, well, I'm going to learn how to swim real good. And then I'm going to get myself like an open water challenge, like swim across, find a lake that, is a challenge to get across, right? Do something. I want to, challenge myself every year, challenge my life, and then just go work on gaining capabilities and put myself in situations that I don't have, that I want to gain experience and gain capacity in. And I mean, that's kind of it. I do see myself down the road getting more into education. I might not be coaching anymore, but I'd probably write some books as far as that goes. But then the rest would be concentrating on myself. I've spent so many years concentrating on other people
Yes.
that I can't neglect myself, and I have for a long time. So uh, and here's the thing, like I could have better output than him. It's not like I'm in bad shape and people wouldn't, usually guess my age. But that's not it. It is um acquiring skills in other areas of life that I don't have as high a level as I want, you know. Um
You mentioned that last time, like in training, 15% new exercises and
mhm,
similar in life.
yeah.
You mentioned kind of like growing your own food and getting some
Mhm.
animals. You
Yeah.
you know Dr. Serrano? He's in
Yeah, yeah.
I think
Yep.
he's kind of done that, and I think I'm not sure of his medical practice, but I still think people like now visit him at home. And I almost
Mhm.
see like my coaching, if I'm doing more coaching again, that eventually it would be a very select few, but you're coming to my home, my garage gym. And I
Correct.
remember Bert Soren telling me, he said, before gyms were this thing, before strength and conditioning facilities were a thing, many of the best strength coaches you never knew about were just in a garage with a squat stand, a bar, and that's it. And they were
Yeah.
these high level coaches, and there's something special about that,
Mhm.
going back to the
Yeah.
very pure style of training. And I think from a business standpoint, you look at Planet Fitness. Is there Planet Fitness in Ohio or no?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So the model behind that is basically all machines, so nobody needs to coach you. And this low price that flies under the radar of their credit card. So you're like, 1995. Do I need to
Yeah.
cancel it? Like it's just a headache for me. I'll just let it go. And just really for anybody, if it's the dumbbells don't go heavier than 50. I think the original locations went up to 75. Now it's up to 50. So that attracts the opposite of who you and I want to be around.
Yeah.
We want people who lift the 120s, the 150s, but who's lifting 20s and 30s? Not crazy people like us. We think we're normal, but that sustains your equipment. Nobody's breaking your barbell
Mhm.
because there is no barbell. There's a Smith machine.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is, from a business standpoint, you don't need a coach in there. You sell, you get a vending machine that sells protein shakes. So you don't have a person in there and it's just machines. Is that a business from the heart? No. Is that a business that feeds a bank account? Yes.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, in
Well,
a model that I'll never be a part of. I don't want to be. you
It's
know?
a heartbreaking truth. Like, we look at, like, when I look at group pictures of our athletes, I'm like, man, like, we barely have high school kids anymore. And the
Yeah.
reason being is what you said earlier. I'm on my own program. I'm just doing my own thing. Well, if an Olympian has a strength coach, maybe a 16-year
Yeah.
old could use a strength coach. Did you see the video of the kid box squatting and falling back? That's kind of
No,
gone.
no.
I'm going to make a response to that. I think it'll be, people look at it more of like a joke. Hey, it's a YouTube fail. But I look at it as like, you've got a kid box squatting too heavy with a coach recording, not inside a power rack, yet the cage is in front of him. Somebody who might own a gym. So I'm looking at it, Shane. I'm sure you understand this. Like, we can't even call a strength and conditioning profession because it lacks this kind of professional entryway. So,
Correct.
we got people recording stuff because that's more important than the safety of the person. I got to get this video, right? I got to get it up on my social media. We've got somebody that owns a gym, and it's not that expensive to buy gym equipment as it was 15, 20 plus years ago. So I could buy gym equipment, and now I'm a strength coach. Or I could
Yeah.
get a bunch of cones and I'll meet everybody at the turf and say I'm a speed and agility coach. And people will say, I always say, well, if all box squats are the same, why don't we all squat 900 and 1,000 pounds like we're at Westside? I
Yeah.
mean, it's the same thing. And I also look at that video as like that kid could have died.
Hmm.
He crashed on the box and then fell backwards. No spotter. He's outside of the cage. The cage is in front of him. And so that's what happens when everybody thinks, hey, I'm on my own program or I'm doing the same stuff. Yeah, you box squat, they box squat, but I drive my car, NASCAR drives cars. It's
Hmm.
different. And that's the
Yeah.
hard message to get out there because, as you said, what's the battle? What's the mystique? What is the fight to enter the cage? Um, Entering a cage in the early 2000s, late 90s, and no holds barred fighting.
Mhm.
You Do you see some of the guys fighting now? It's like, bro, you look like you haven't done a push up in 10 years. Well, how did you enter this
Yeah.
cage? So that barrier to entry is gone. And I think it's really like there's no elitism. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It will also cut down on people who end up ultimately in the gym because if you don't have success or you get hurt, you'll find your way out of a gym quick. The only time you keep in a gym for a long period of time of your life is if you have success and you can stay injury, resilient. I don't say injury free, things happen, but it shouldn't be a common practice, right? And stupid injuries like that should never happen,
Well, that kid could have
So,
died, could have broken his neck or
well,
back.
you just had that teenage powerlifter, that female that died a few months ago,
Horrible.
you know?
Horrible.
So, people, yeah, they don't realize how dangerous it can be. And also, hey, you know what? If you do your own training, you don't want to listen to anybody else, maybe you spend 3, 4 years in the gym. You still, if that's what you do in your 20s, I hate to tell you, it's not going to carry through to your 70s and 80s. Your quality of life is going to be real downhill and it can cost you years on your life and quality of your life. Just like you said with your mother saying like people used to die in their bed, like in sleep, right? The thing about it is I found that people who are really healthy, they tend to live awesome quality life and they're gone in a week or two. And then you have people who are not healthy and they suffer for 10, 15, 20 years. And I
Yes.
tell people it's like, look, as humans, we have X amount of suffering coming our way.
Mhm.
You can choose. You can work out and take a minute amount of suffering 4, 5, 6 days a week for your whole life, or you can massively suffer the last 15 to 20 years of your life. Your choice, but the
Chosen.
suffering's coming.
Yeah.
I would rather look good, feel good, have great output, and have a minute suffering all the time than to get it all at the end of my life in 10, 15 year lump sum and not feel good, not, have a good build and not have good output,
Yeah,
you
you're
know?
just incapable.
Mm.
We didn't like get into it too much, but I've seen some people in their 50s, 60s, maybe older on the Instagram. Do you have like two to three things that tend to really be a mainstay in training the older population to keep them strong, fit, healthy, looking young? What's things
Yeah.
that you address?
I mean, big for me is still same thing for powerlifting, posterior chain. A lot of people when they get older, they have back issues. Well, how many people have small glutes when they get older?
Yeah.
It sounds funny, but it's like look at people who have low back issues. Older people with no butt, truck drivers have no butt, they have low back issues. And so the thing is, um, I work on posterior chain. Box squats are great for people who are older, but the really thing I look at is this: what could you do before that you can't do now? And then I
Mhm.
want to try to regain as much of that as possible. Now that doesn't mean, hey, in high school I ran a 4:10 mile. I want to get back to that. And I'm 70. I mean, you're not going to get back to that. But what I do mean by that is I can't squat. Why? My knees bother me. Okay, well, let's see if we can fix that. What
Yes.
if it's a hip mobility issue? What if your hamstrings are weak? What if your IT bands are tight? There's things we can do about that. So I want to get that person to be able to squat again. Okay. So a lot of sled work is great for older people. You have no vertical load. If you walk forward, backwards, and laterally, you'll hit everything in your lower body.
Yep.
It works phenomenal. So I do like to do a lot of sled work with people as they get older, and I want to regain exercises. That's one of my number one things. I want someone to move perfectly. So their accessories are designed to get them to move perfectly, right? So that's really what I look for. I look for high quality movement, and I want to regain uh, any kind of lost exercises or movements that they can't do because of injuries that have happened.
What about any machines, Shane? I'm looking at possibly expanding
Mhm,
if I could get this extra spot in front of my gym. You mentioned like glutes. My buddy Brett Contreras, like
mhm,
he trains women. They have beautiful physiques, but he's training them like powerlifters. They
mhm,
squat, bench, deadlift, and they do
yeah.
accessory work. But I've seen some unique machines. Have you picked up any unique machines as of past few years?
I mean, yeah, like I have a hip bridge machine. It's a
Hmm.
little different than Brett's, quite a bit different. It loads a lot of weight, band tension, and all that stuff. Has different angles to it and stuff.
What brand is it? You
So
know?
that's Bridge Fitness.
Oh, Bridge
So,
Fitness. Okay.
yep. So, I have actually the first original prototype for that. And then, so that's one. I always have belt squats because belt squats are amazing for people as they get older anyway.
Yep.
But yeah, hey, I'm all about equipment. I really am. I mean, I like machines. I like machines that can do stuff that you can't get free weight wise. If it can create a feeling that I can't get free weight, then I like the machine, you know?
What's
Um,
the Belt Squad has gone through so many different companies. Do you have more than one? What's the ones you've
So
got?
well, I just sold one, so now I'm down to three. I had four, but I have an Elite FTS one, and I have two West Side ones. So they have the adjustable. So I have the big ones. I like Rogues also, but I like the big platform because I can do a lot more with them. Um, those are really West Sides are my favorite. Elite after that, and then my third would be Rogues. I would
Okay.
say are the ones I've used.
I think
Yeah.
when I was at Rutgers, I ordered one from Westside, the ATP. Is that what you have? The
Yep.
athletic training
Yep.
platform?
Yep.
Yep. What are the machines that you feel maybe like they're the old bodybuilding style machines? Like I know you have the inverse curl, but what about just some
I have a
gym
old,
bodybuilding
like the
machines?
old
Pull
pullovers.
over.
I have one of those.
Nice.
I have all kinds of weird stuff. Like I have York blobs for grip. I have
Yeah.
all kinds of grip tools. I bought every bar you can imagine. Um, and as far as it goes, like, um, I'm trying to think of anything. I know I have so much stuff. I can't even really think about it. Um, but yeah, I'm huge on equipment. I look for certain models. Like sometimes there's older models are better than newer ones. I constantly am like looking to upgrade. So even if I have something, if I can find something I know that there's a company that makes one better, I'll get it. I just bought last week. I bought three Paramount machines. They're sort of like a row machine and a lat pull down, but the lat pull down comes. You hold above head, it comes out to the side. And I
Yeah.
also like the one. I don't know if you remember those. I'm sure you'll remember it. Remember the lat machine where you stand up, your hand go overhead, and you pull straight down to your side?
Yes.
Yes, those work phenomenal,
What
but
company
you
made
never see
that?
them. I
What
have no clue, but you never see those things anymore. But they work great. I used one when I was back home about a
in
month ago.
Michigan?
Yeah.
There's actually a
And
local kid and his dad in my little tiny town. They got a storage facility, and I drove by one night and it's dark, dark, and I see a garage open and I see Cybex. I'm like, what? I turn around and I see, and he said they're predominantly shipping to like gyms in Europe, but
yeah.
they have a lot of old Cybex, Paramount. Do you remember Flex?
Yep. I have
Very
some
good
Flex.
equipment.
I have Paramount. I have Icarian. I have
Very
Body
good.
Master. I have
Yes.
Arsenal. I have everything from West Side. Elite stuff, Rogue stuff. I mean, I have all kinds of,
Yeah.
a lot of old York stuff.
Um, Kept you longer than I wanted to. I think you have a certification online, am I right? Is it active?
Yes. Yeah, it's for conjugate
Conjugate?
powerlifting,
Yep.
conjugate methods course. And so, yeah, yep. So I teach seminars through that, and they come with continuous education credits. As far as that goes, it's a 2-day course, 2 8-hour days.
Oh, so you have the in-person, but you also have the online course,
We
right?
have an online one as well. Yep. And
Yeah.
it actually it is I have a recorded of the 2 8-hour days on
Yep.
that is recorded along with other information. Yeah.
Nice. I think coaches, gym owners, like, hey, I want my guys to learn. I'm either going to send them to a seminar or get them the online continuing education. And so that's to me is like this hunger to learn you were talking about. You're going to read all these books. Like my dude, look at my desk. Like
Yeah, right.
it is just, you know what I'm saying?
Perfect. Yep.
And this computer is on 8 books, and then there's a million. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. And my only concern is like one day I move out of this house. I'm not worried about like living space. I'm like, I need a library
Yeah, right. And that's
because,
exactly what they should have.
yeah, I just want to be able to like, my wife's always like, do you need these magazines? I go, yes. Sometimes before I make a video, I pull all of these magazines out and I go through them so I have some inspiration for an idea.
Yep.
Last question, Shane. Any books you're reading now? Something you recommend? And then we'll
Um,
shut it down.
any books? I've been reading books on homesteading. It's actually what I've been reading is books on homesteading. That and I'm trying to think of what book it is. It's I had one of it was a Russian text that I ended up getting in Europe, and I don't even know, I don't even know the name of it. I'd have to dig it out.
Okay.
But that's been the last thing I've been
A,
reading.
a training book?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's more basically it's really more deep in the science of stuff. Like how much on different angles, what kind of percentage of power can you get on what different angles and things like that. And then it kind of goes more into the more in more deeper, a little bit deeper into the science of things. So I've been getting into that because it's something that I wouldn't have understood years ago, but now after years of doing what I've done,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's kind of that's kind of where I'm
In,
at right
in
now.
America, a lot of our exercise science PhDs are going into the velocity based training, but would be cool if they went the old Soviet method of I'm going to get my PhD in the defending the suplex like
Yeah,
Alexander
right.
Karelin. I'm
Mhm.
going to get the PhD in the triple long jump and really
Yeah,
go like just an inch wide and a mile deep. I mean,
I
I don't
agree.
know. I don't know if a university would approve that in America, but the Soviets did, and I thought that was cool how they
Yeah.
did that. Any resources you want to mention for the listeners or people watching? We got the conjugate methods course.
Yeah, and if anybody ever wants to reach out, I'm a Sweatshop Cincinnati is my Instagram. You can message me there. I'll answer questions anytime for anybody who people who want to achieve something and want to push. I'll give whatever time I can to. That's not a problem. So you can reach out there. On Wadfollow I have programming as well, and yeah, so that's kind of
That's
where
for
it's at.
gym owners because I use Watify.
Yep,
I think I may have been the
we're out there.
first strength and conditioning facility to use Watify. At the time, it was just CrossFit.
Yep,
And so I
yep,
used it to manage 2 gyms. So
yeah,
for those that listen, I've mentioned Watify a lot. If you have a gym, basically, if you don't want a program, you purchase Shane's programming and it's delivered to your gym. And then you're just running the gym, but you got the programming. Yeah. So very, very smart, very cool. Um, that's it, guys. Strong Life Podcast. Please leave a 5-star review. Share this with friends. If you're on YouTube, comment below. I'm going to link up Shane's Instagram Conjugate Methods course. I'm going to link that up in the info section on YouTube and anywhere you could listen. And of course, on the blog. And appreciate everybody listening. And Shane, just hang tight and have a proper goodbye. Thanks, everybody.